for the White House. As presumptive President-elect Joe Biden names his economic team, President Donald Trump's lawyers continue to allege voter fraud in the 2020 election. Funding stalemate. Lawmakers continue to debate ways to provide financial help to those affected by the coronavirus. Concern in Jerusalem. How COVID-19 is impacting the birthplace of Christ. And Christmas in Kosovo. A Catholic church is bringing a message of hope during the pandemic. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Presumptive President-elect Joe Biden tells Americans help is on the way. He introduced his new economic team this afternoon. They will face an economy devastated by lockdowns and layoffs. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump files another election lawsuit in Wisconsin, where the results have already been certified. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, will start tonight with Joe Biden. If his economic team selections get the green light, they will face a monumental task.
Tonight, a Biden White House is set to square off against economic challenges gripping the nation amid the coronavirus pandemic.
And I know times are tough, but I want you to know that help is on the way.
This afternoon in Delaware, presumptive President-elect Joe Biden said that his team is tested, experienced, and ready to go.
A first-rate team that's going to get us through this ongoing economic crisis and help us build the economy back, not just build it back, but build it back better than it was before.
And among the key people picked to help the nation rebound.
And now we're facing historic crises again.
Former Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen, tapped by Joe Biden to lead the Treasury Department. Part of her vision?
To rebuild our infrastructure and create better jobs, to invest in our workforce, to advance racial equity and make sure the economic recovery includes everyone.
Tim Reichert is the founder and president of Economics Partners.
I actually think it'll change things quite a lot.
He believes this announced economic team will want to implement new health care policies and environmental reforms.
You know, the idea that we can just transition an economy from fossil fuels to green energy cascades through supply chains in ways that are completely unexpected.
Meanwhile, battling the election results, the Trump campaign files a new lawsuit in Wisconsin. It includes an accusation that municipal clerks issued absentee ballots to voters without requiring the mandatory application, in direct conflict with Wisconsin's absentee voting safeguards, and that unlawful actions affected no less than approximately 221,000 ballots out of over the 3 million ballots cast in Wisconsin.
Also tonight, Attorney General Bill Barr says the Justice Department has not uncovered any evidence of widespread fraud in the election. On a separate note, on this Giving Tuesday, President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump thank all Americans who've helped those in need, and they ask people to continue with their charitable contributions. For example, you can work at a food shelter or also help the elderly and donate to a charitable cause, a worthy cause. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much for that, Owen. Appreciate that. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. And joining me now on Skype to talk more about President Trump's election lawsuit is Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Hans, welcome back. Always great to have you on. As Owen just mentioned earlier today, Attorney General William Barr told the Associated Press that the Justice Department has not uncovered evidence of widespread voter fraud that would change the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. But President Trump's lawyers are forging ahead. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, you know, I have a lot of respect for Attorney General Barr, but he didn't say what he bases that conclusion on. You know, there are 93 U.S. attorneys across the country. What investigations have they actually done to look into this problem? I haven't seen any reports that any U.S. attorneys have actually investigated any of the allegations that have been made in various states.
Hans, I want to turn back to that lawsuit in Wisconsin. What are the lawyers for President Trump? What are they alleging? And what do we know about that evidence to support their claims?
Well, that case is really interesting. Two of the biggest claims they're making is that Wisconsin state law requires a witness signature on an absentee ballot, and the witness has to not only put down their name, but their address also. And the lawsuit's claiming that, in fact, defective ballots came in where the witness signed it but didn't actually put their name and address, which is supposed to be there to identify that witness, and that clerks simply filled in the information that the witness was supposed to put in. Their other claim is that Wisconsin has a voter ID law. It also applies to absentee ballots. There is an exemption, however, an exception for individuals who are indefinitely confined because of age or disability. And again, the claim there is that in two counties, Dane County and Milwaukee County, election officials encouraged individuals to avoid the voter ID law by falsely claiming that they were indefinitely confined when in fact they weren't. And because of that exception, the number of people using that exception, it like tripled from the last election.
Well, as you know, Joe Biden has been certified as the winner of Wisconsin's 10 Electoral College votes. Now, if the Wisconsin Supreme Court, if they do agree to take this case on, how could that be affected? And also, what happens next?
Well, in fact, in most states, the law is that if you have litigation that you want to file to contest an election, you actually do it after the election's been certified, because that's when the results are official. So, if the state Supreme Court was convinced that officials had actually broken state law in those two counties and had accepted invalid absentee ballots or early ballots, they could potentially overturn the election results. That seems like a pretty long shot for the president's campaign, but that is the result that could happen.
Hans, we have about a minute or so left. I do want to get to this last question. As we know, time is ticking. The Electoral College is meeting on December 14th. Right. Of course, that deadline is fast approaching. Let's talk about what that means for any further legal challenges.
Well, December 8th is a date that's also in federal law, that if a state certifies the results of the election and does it by December 8th, then Congress can't question the results. So that's one of the deadlines that everyone is looking at. But the other big deadline is December 14th, because by that date, the election has to be determined in every state. Litigation is supposed to be over, so they know which set of electors, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, get to go to the state capitol and cast their ballot. So everything will be over by December 14th.
All right, we will see what happens then. Thanks so much, Hans. Always appreciate having you on. Hans von Spakovsky, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Tonight, new hope for breaking the stalemate over a coronavirus relief package on Capitol Hill. It comes as federal protections like eviction moratoriums and student loan suspensions are set to expire at the end of the year. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports. Eric?
Tracy, listening to Republicans and Democrats on the Senate floor, it seems like that they are more divided than ever before on what to do about the next COVID virus relief bill. But this morning, a bipartisan group of lawmakers from both chambers say that they've come up with a plan to help bridge the gap, and they want to see this plan get implemented before the Christmas break. Unveiling a new plan.
We're determined not to go home until we do something.
A group of bipartisan senators and House members want to help struggling Americans and businesses.
It is absolutely essential that we pass emergency relief. I'm particularly pleased that the package includes $228 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program.
The $908 billion package would include $16 billion for vaccine distribution, testing, and contact tracing, an extra $300 a week in unemployment money, aid to airlines and bus companies, plus money for rental assistance and child care.
This pandemic has hit everybody in unexpected ways. I think that's what we need to remember right now as we come together to do the will of the American people.
The lawmakers admit the White House and congressional party leaders do not yet back the plan, and it's unclear when they will release the text of their bill. That leaves questions, like whether they propose to include money for abortion services. But one big detail that could help win support from GOP leader Mitch McConnell: liability protections.
We did negotiate a liability provision that provides a temporary moratorium on a temporary suspension of any liability-related lawsuits, the state or federal level, associated with COVID.
Details like this could lead lawmakers to a deal.
This is an opportunity for the American people to have relief. It is also a profound opportunity for this institution to show the American people that we are able to rise to the occasion.
And earlier this morning, Steven Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, testified up here on Capitol Hill on how the actual CARES Act money is being spent. He pointed to lawmakers that there is currently $455 billion that is still unspent, and he says that would be a good start for lawmakers to make that available to Americans to be able to provide some sort of COVID relief. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. A community of 76 religious sisters in Germany have tested positive for COVID-19. They live in a Franciscan convent in the northwest part of the country. Nearly 90 other members of the community do not have the virus. The Mother Superior says no one has been hospitalized. The pandemic has devastated tourism around the world. In the Holy Land, very few visitors are expected for Christmas.
We don't have tourism in Jerusalem.
The Old City is normally bustling with tourists this time of year. Now, however, the streets are eerily quiet. In Bethlehem, there are strict limits on Christmas celebrations, and restaurants have to close at 9 p.m. this month. Last year, thousands of tourists visited the birthplace of Jesus. The Centers for Disease Control votes to see who will be the first to get any vaccine for COVID-19. According to reports, officials at the CDC met today to decide if elderly Americans should receive priority. Frontline hospital workers and nursing home residents are expected to be next in line. The vote comes a day after Moderna applied to the FDA for emergency use authorization for its vaccine. And in Europe today, Pfizer asked regulators to approve its vaccine developed with German drug giant BioNTech. They say their vaccine has a 95% success rate and has been particularly effective in older age groups. It could be approved by the end of the month. The international airport in Belgium is preparing to handle millions of vaccines.
20% of all vaccines worldwide are shipped through Brussels Airport already before the COVID.
Cargo managers say that they have special equipment to transport the vaccines, including dry ice, as some vaccines require cold storage. The president of the European Commission says the EU has contracted to get 2 billion doses of a potential vaccine. Coming up, a closer look at the Supreme Court's ruling on COVID-related attendance limits at churches and synagogues in New York. Pope Francis has named a new leader for the Diocese of Buffalo in New York. Bishop Michael Fisher is an auxiliary bishop in the Archdiocese of Washington. The 62-year-old takes over in Buffalo, which is facing another lawsuit from the state of New York over a failure to protect children from clergy sex abuse. He succeeds Bishop Richard Malone, who resigned amid the misconduct scandals last December. Tonight, we take a closer look at last week's Supreme Court ruling barring the state of New York from enforcing COVID-related attendance limits at churches and synagogues. In granting the request from the Diocese of Brooklyn and 2 Orthodox Jewish synagogues, the High Court's opinion reads in part, quote, "Even in a pandemic, the Constitution cannot be put away and forgotten. The restrictions at issue here, by effectively barring many from attending religious services, strike at the very heart of the First Amendment's guarantee of religious liberty." Andrea Picciotti, director of the Conscious Project, joins me now on Skype. Andrea, welcome back. Always so great to see you. I want to get your perspective on the action by the Supreme Court. How significant do you think it is, and what stands out to you from the justice's writings?
Well, Tracy, this is really a huge movement forward on behalf of the court in support of religious freedom, and especially at this time, very difficult time of the pandemic. It's a change, of course, because earlier this year, at the beginning of the pandemic, the court refused to issue such enforcement in cases brought in California and Nevada. And so seeing it happen in New York is really a great breath of fresh air. Couldn't have come at a more important time when we're giving thanks for all the blessings that we have.
Absolutely. You mentioned the cases brought by churches in California and Nevada. What do you think made the difference this time around, Andrea?
Well, Tracy, that's a great question. First and foremost, I think, is the change of the composition of the court. Justice Amy Coney Barrett is now joining the court, and she joined the majority in the New York order. She joined Justice Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh. The second is that the New York order, the Cuomo orders, as I like to call them, were particularly severe in restricting attendance in different areas of the state, and were very patently discriminatory against houses of worship, where they did allow other things like big box stores and bicycle repair shops to stay open without any kind of attendance limits. And the third is, like I mentioned earlier, we've been living through this pandemic for a while. We understand how to abate some of the transmission of the disease and to better treat people who are infected. And I think it was Neil Gorsuch who wrote a concurring opinion in this order where he said that the Constitution took a holiday early on in the pandemic, but it can't take a sabbatical.
Absolutely. The Supreme Court's ruling, however, we know is temporary. That being said, what happens next in this case?
Well, it does seem like it's going to be reviewed by the lower court of appeals on the merits and bring in more evidence. But the strength of the order that was written, a per curiam order by the Supreme Court, really showed that there was although there's a compelling interest on behalf of the state to curb the spread of the coronavirus, there wasn't a narrow tailoring aspect to this order. It was overly harsh, overly discriminatory, allowed some secular entities to be open without limits, but did definitely put restrictions on houses of worship. So I think going forward, it's going to continue to enjoin these kinds of draconian orders. And at the same time, while we have clearly from the Supreme Court reinforced a religious freedom right, we do have a responsibility. So we need to follow the guidance of our health officials. We need to follow those 3 W's: wash your hands, wear a mask, and watch your distance. And at the same time, we need to continue to pray for the end of this pandemic and enjoy the blessings that we have in being able to gather and worship and adore our Lord as we enter into Advent.
Absolutely. Great advice, Andrea, and thanks so much for your insight. We always appreciate it. Andrea Picciotti, director of the Conscious Project. Thanks again.
Thanks, Trace.
Up next, a landmark in Rome is lit up to take a stand against the death penalty. Plus, how a Catholic church is showing the Christmas spirit. Pope Francis says that we should aim to be the people of God and not the elite of God.
Sin pretender ser élite ilustrada.
In a video message released yesterday to judges around the world, the Holy Father said the work for justice must be focused on raising the fallen, and it should emphasize all people, not just the powerful. The city of Rome was the center of a global rally last night to end capital punishment. The Colosseum in Rome was lit up as part of Say No to the Death Penalty and was organized by the community of Sant'Egidio. Pope Francis also weighed in on social media saying, quote, "The firm rejection of the death penalty shows to what extent it is possible to recognize the inalienable dignity of every human being." Joining us now is Father Marco Gnavi, parish priest at the Basilica of Our Lady in Trastevere, also leads the community of Sant'Egidio's death penalty initiatives. Father, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us, what was the significance of lighting the Colosseum last night?
To enlight a monument which has been a symbol of cruelty and death, and turn upside down this symbol in a witness of hope and the witness of the struggle against the death penalty, for the moratorium, for the ceasefire of hatred in favor of life.
Father, can you explain a little bit more about your work against the death penalty?
Well, we began, myself and our friends of the community of Sant'Egidio 20 years ago, because we have got in touch with an inmate who has been killed in 2006, Dominique Grinel. He challenged us to enter in the death rows and to help all of those who are trapped in this punishment without rehabilitation, to open up the bars and to persuade the people that inside the death rows there were human beings with a right to a future, together with the victims, the family relatives of the victims, and all of those who suffer because of evil. And we have a power of the word, of the culture, of our faith, of our energies, to be in a network.
Father, if you had the opportunity, what would you like to say to the countries, or rather the leaders of the countries, who don't want to abolish capital punishment?
Benefit of the teachings of Pope Francis, Benedict, and John Paul II, who have been leading the Church in a future where life is a treasure for everybody, and to, in a way, to purify the culture from the culture of death, revenge, and turn upside down it in a chance to reapproach the people. The laceration of the United States and the societies worldwide in terms of death penalty should be healed in a new positive action and future in view of the abolition.
Well, Father, thank you so much for your time today and for what you do. We really appreciate it. Father Marco Gnavi, parish priest at the Basilica of Our Lady in Trastevere. Thank you again, Father.
Thank you too.
The annual pilgrimage of St. Andrew in Romania was canceled because of the coronavirus. So instead, the head of Romania's Orthodox Church held a mass on St. Andrew Day yesterday. Visitors kissed relics on an altar in front of the cave of St. Apostle Andrew. The Orthodox Archbishop spoke to a crowd from a stage near the cave where St. Andrew is believed to have lived. In Romania, 85% of the population identify as Orthodox Christian. And finally tonight, Christmas lights in a small town in Kosovo are bringing much needed hope after a year of the pandemic. Kosovo is mostly Muslim, with a small Serbian Orthodox community and an even smaller Albanian Catholic population. But this remote town has a reputation for drawing thousands every year to see the Christmas lights. The Catholic priests there say the lights this year have extraordinary value because of the pandemic. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.